Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's podcast episode of I Never Knew But My Dog Did. I am Maureen Scanlon, your hostess and life coach Maureen, as most of you know me. I'm really excited about my next guest today, guys. I hope everybody's doing really well, had a fabulous week. I'm so excited because my guest today, she just really fascinated me when I read her bio and what she does. I instantly was like, oh, I have to know what this is about. And I'm probably going to say the title wrong, but she'll help me through that. But this is what I love the most about mental health advocating in the world today is we're all coming together in different ways to help each other. And the fact that we can have so many different ways that work for all of us, because we're all different and we all have different needs. And so I think it's so neat when I see these different things that I don't even know about when it comes to helping us with our mental health and beliefs and understanding of ourselves. So today I have Carolyn Wallace. She's a licensed social worker and archetypal consultant with almost 20 years of experience guiding people through the process of transformation. While she's worked with various modalities, archetypal consulting is the most powerful and transformative so far. Through archetypal consulting sessions, speaking, and writing, she helps spiritual women, love that, stand in their own authority with unapologetic, radiant confidence, tap into their unique soul blueprint, and activate their highest potential through the power of archetypes. She holds a 500-hour yoga teacher certification from Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health, and is a certified Shake Your Soul dance teacher. I can't wait to hear what that is. While employed at Kripalu, she taught many yoga and dance classes and workshops. She is a seeker of spiritual wisdom and draws from many different streams in her work with clients. Hello and good morning, Miss Carolyn Wallace.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I am so happy you're here, and please forgive. I'm one of these, I'm neurodivergent. So it doesn't have me, but I have some focus issues, shall we say. And I did find out recently that I am high functioning autism. So what is formerly known sort of as Asperger's, which they don't do anymore. But so for me, I've learned these coping mechanisms, and one of them is to repeat things that I don't know. And so when I didn't say it right in my head, I was going to repeat it 3 times. So it's just interesting. And I thank you for helping me with that and being patient. But it's a beautiful morning. Where you're from, it is rainy and gloomy, but you are not rainy and gloomy. You are a light in this world. And I can't wait to find out your story. And here at I Never Knew, we start with what I call the knee story. So moments in our life that we really were brought to our knees and said, something has to change in my life. I'm doing something that just keeps repeating the insanity cycle. So do you have any story or stories you want to share with us that were your knee moments?
Well, I probably have multiple of those. The most recent one, and the one that I talk about often when I'm speaking about archetypes and how they really became real for me, was the time a number of years ago now, I was in an unhappy marriage. And actually, I've published an article in Elephant Journal, if anyone wants to try to look that up. But it's about this story. It's about being in an unhappy marriage, being the mom of 2 young children. They're big now, and they're on their way now, but it's about learning. So I became a certified archetypal consultant through Carolyn Mace's certification program that she calls Sacred Contracts. So everything I know about archetypes, or maybe not everything, but the way I speak about it comes from Carolyn Mace's material. So if you want to learn more about her work, go to either mace.com or get her book, Sacred Contracts. You will not be disappointed in that book. So I had just enrolled in her certification program. And the first part of it is a self-paced program where you kind of watch the videos that have been pre-recorded when you have time and you gather this information. And I was home alone with my children, as I usually was, because my now ex-husband was just never around. And I was kind of raising these kids by myself, which was not what I'd signed up to do. I thought that we were going to do this as a partnership, and that was not happening. And so the first video, or one of the first videos that I was watching, it was bedtime. I was about to put my kids to bed. They were playing in the bedroom, and I put on this video, and the woman came on. She started talking about the victim archetype and how the victim sort of has this whole pervasive attitude of, oh, poor me, I can never have the things that I want. I'm just not allowed. The universe is conspiring against me, and so I was interested to hear that, because there was something in that I recognized. But then she started talking about the path out of that archetype, because every archetype has its shadow side where we get stuck in like our default mode, like our reaction. It's not a very evolved response. Like I just mentioned, the victim in the shadow is not going to get too far in this world with this, oh, poor me attitude. And then the victim goes on and starts to tell all her friends about how hard her life really is. And all her friends get on board and say, oh, yes, what a terrible marriage you have. And I'm really sorry that's happening to you. And then that just enforces this victim, right? So I was just kind of learning about all of these patterns that I had been engaging in. And then she started mentioning a path out, a path forward. And I thought, oh, it like blew my mind. I thought, oh, you mean this isn't just my default forever? There's something I can do to evolve my consciousness out of this default mode, and I can start to take on the energy maybe of a warrior, and I can start to have boundaries, and it doesn't have to be the way it's always been. I can evolve my consciousness and make different choices, think different thoughts, try on the light side of this archetype for once, and see where it takes me. And that was really the beginning of me starting to take responsibility for my situation and changing it. And it took time. It didn't happen overnight. It took time. My article explains the process, but that was really the story where I thought, okay, this archetype work is real. It matters to me. It comes alive for me. And I found it to be true over and over and over again.
I love that so much. And in your article that I read, guys, it's the Elephant Journal, and I'm going to include that link in the show notes so you guys can go to it. I found it super interesting. There's the path from victimhood, and it's through the warrior archetype. And I love that it's a similar thing that I'll do in my life coaching sessions, which is let's reframe it. And the reframing, I love what you said, was you go from I'm not allowed to do that to I will not allow that. And I love that so much, because I found that to be, for me, same thing. Being in that victim mentality, you feel so stuck, like I don't have a choice. Or being raised by parents, my mother always said, you made your bed, lie in it. So you felt like you were, not only did you think you were a victim, but you were made to be a victim, because here's these four walls that they're not going to allow you to get out of. You mentioned there are 4 survivor archetypes. And let's first start with, are archetypes the belief system and mindset we have, or is it a personality type? What makes an archetype?
Well, the way Carolyn Mace defines it, she calls them psychological emotional patterns of power that exist in the collective unconscious. So they're bigger than personality types, because archetypes are both very personal to each of us if we, or if we embody those particular ones, but they're also very impersonal. Like the victim archetype doesn't care so much whether, I am going to express its shadow side or its light side. It just is. And there's also no shame. Like if someone has a bully archetype, I use that one often as an example. If someone has a bully archetype, that archetype just is. It's what's the person going to do with it? How are they going to keep, bullying others, disempowering others, violating others' boundaries, which is the shadow side of the bully archetype? Or are they going to think about it a little bit more? How are they going to be more helpful in the world? How are they going to use that energy of the bully in the light to like light a fire under people who really need, a little bit more direction? Kind of like I think of often career coaches in high schools, where if a high school kid just doesn't want to think about filling out the college application or whatever, that person can light a fire under them, get them going with that energy without violating boundaries, without causing damage. So that's an example of how one archetype can be seen in the shadow, or if the person takes some responsibility for it, put some thought into it, can really do a lot of good if they express it from the light. So that's kind of what an archetype is and how we can use it. And if you want, I can talk about the 4 survival archetypes, but I want to leave room for a question if you have one.
Yeah, no, definitely. We are definitely getting there. As you were speaking, I was thinking of, narcissistic traits or NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, and people that I've known that have had very heavy narcissistic traits. They're brilliant. And I would always say the people in my life that expressed those or showed those traits, I used to think, if they took it for good, if they used that brilliance for good, and as you said, light and shadow sides, that's exactly what I thought of, was like, if they didn't use it for deception and gaslighting and lying, but they took that brilliance that you need to cover lies and, deceive, and they use that for good in the world. So does that sound something like what you're talking about?
How much energy could be freed up to further the collective instead of keep trying to drag it back down into the shadow.
Yes. All right. Let's go to the 4 survivor archetypes, which
All right.
I'm fascinated.
These are created by Carolyn Wallace, not by me, so we're clear. So the 4 survivor archetypes that she outlines in Sacred Contracts are the victim, which we've already talked about a little bit, the prostitute, which I can talk about. I know that's a charged word. If people don't like that word, we don't have to use it. The child, and the saboteur. Those are the 4. And there is a trajectory for each one of those of how to move out of a disempowered state into a more empowered state. And again, it's not going to be the same for every person. Like I had to go in my victim, it was helpful for me to think about going through the warrior archetype, but some people might have a different expression and might have a different path out. For example, like another shadow side of the victim could be someone who victimizes, someone who does a lot of blaming. Instead of going internal and feeling like I'm not allowed, someone might say, it's your fault. It's your fault I'm stuck in this position. And so that person might not be as best suited to go through a warrior archetype. They might need something a little more compassionate to get them to where they need to be, which ultimately for the warrior, for the victim, is the guardian of self-esteem. So we're all looking to get to the guardian of self-esteem with the victim archetype. It's the path to it can be different for different folks.
Oh, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. It's finding wherever we are on the dark side of our archetype and bringing the best of us out of that and really living that light side, right?
Yeah, and taking as much responsibility as we can.
Accountability.
Yeah.
So we talked about the victim, and we use any words here. We are completely open, and because this is life. We don't filter anything here. There's no need to filter. This is authentic and real. And none of my listeners, I love you all, are offended by anything because they're so open-minded and spiritually aligned with all of us. So let's talk about prostitute archetype.
Prostitute archetype. And remember, we all have these. Every person on the planet, walking on the planet, has all of these. So the prostitute is the part of ourselves. Now, we're most of us are not walking around selling our bodies for money. That is just not what the majority of us are doing. But we are selling ourselves out in big or small ways if we're not careful about what we're doing. So, for example, what if there was a family member, a parent, or a sibling that just wasn't treating you the right way, and you didn't have the voice or confidence or courage to speak up and name it and say it and say, I'm just not not going to continue with these family functions as long as I'm being treated this way. Well, that would probably cause a great big stir and a great big rift with the other family members. So how much are we selling ourselves out and going along with a program that really doesn't serve us in order to keep the peace? It's true for jobs. How many of us have been in jobs for way too long? The job has started to not align with our values anymore. We feel like we're giving up some of our integrity because we want that paycheck or we need the health insurance. And those are all valid reasons. None of this is easy. Like none of this is cut and dry, right?
Yeah.
Or a relationship that's been long ended and we're still there because keeping the peace just feels safer. And I would never blame anyone. My goodness, I've done it myself for a long time in my own marriage. It's just, how long are we going to deny our truth, our reality, and our integrity? And when does keeping the peace not becomes the goal? Not keeping the peace becomes the part of ourselves that is just, we're not interested in that anymore. We want to stand up and be more in our truth. And the prostitute in the light becomes, we call her the guardian of faith. And the guardian of faith can trust themselves, can trust their intuition, can trust themselves so that they can stand in their integrity and have the confidence to have that voice. And the chips can fall where they may, but they're not interested in compromising their integrity anymore. And so it's a very courageous path to go from prostitute to guardian of faith. Very courageous. And we can do little bits at a time and step into some of that little bits of courage at a time. It doesn't have to be all at once, but that's the trajectory I want people to start thinking about, especially women. Let's start thinking about, what is our truth? What are we here for? What do we want to model for our children?
I absolutely love that. And what comes to mind for me with that archetype is codependence and people pleasing. It just,
It's so big with the prostitute.
yeah, it just feels like, we're, and I think it's difficult for women, especially, that we want to do what others want us to do. And we tend to put ourselves last. We forget that self-care. The children come first. We don't divorce because, oh my gosh, I don't want to mess my whole household routine up and the children to be traumatized. And I love that because I was there and you were there. And anytime you're leaving a marriage with children, it is hard to trust yourself. Are you making the right decision? You mentioned in your article about you started going to the gym. And I remember I went and I'd never done anything. I never went to a movie by myself. I never went to a restaurant by myself. And when I was getting out of my my relationship, I was post-divorce, doing those things alone, I had to trust myself and I had to go to the guardian of faith. So tell us about your experience when you were seeking to be, the guardian of faith.
Yeah. Just trusting myself that I could withstand, even if it was hard, whatever was energy was going to come at me. When I started to be clear that I wanted to leave this marriage and it was imperative. I mean, there were other things going on that I did not write about in the article. So there were some, I mean, we did couples therapy. I would never recommend people jumping ship in their marriage as the first course of action. If there's something there that can be saved and it can be worked on and the two of you can work on it together, I would always recommend that as a first step. But if those things have been exhausted and nothing is changing, and the dysfunction is not only continuing, but ramping up, you have to make a choice that life on the other side of this, the faith, is going to be better than life on the inside. And, I wanted my children to see an empowered mom. And I had the faith that I had, I really didn't have a choice when it came down to it. So
yeah, I completely agree with you and the scary part that I think the reason that anxiety and depression are so rampant, especially anxiety, is that not knowing that if I take this step, this big giant step, there's no going back. But I always say, to clients that are afraid to make a big giant step, I always say your desire, you have to say this to yourself, my desire for this outcome is greater than my fear of not doing it. And
Yes.
so it flips it to, I'm willing to take that risk because the thing that I want is more important for me, for my family, for my health, my mental health, my physical health, my emotional and spiritual health. And it's a way of the warrior sort of pushing yourself to just take the leap and trust. It's hard.
It's hard. Yep. And as you're saying that, I'm thinking also about the saboteur archetype. And the saboteur, is the part of ourselves, like say you have a goal, you have some kind of goal, whether it's exercise goal or to go to the gym goal or whatever it is. And the saboteur, just as you're about to do the thing, will give you all the reasons why maybe it's not such a good idea after all. And it'll give you all this list of reasons why we maybe don't want to move toward that thing after all, whether it's we don't want to get out of our comfortable bed in the morning to jump on the Peloton bike or whatever it is. Lots of reasons. And so with the saboteur archetype, it can look like the way we sabotage ourselves can look like laziness or procrastination or doubt that our goal is really the right thing. That's a big one. Or we give ourselves so many options for what we could do. We get overwhelmed and we get paralyzed and we never make any choice because we just give ourselves way too many options. And so what the saboteur, the trajectory of the saboteur, I like to say it goes through a liberator energy. That's just me talking. But ultimately where we're winding up is the guardian of choice for the saboteur, the guardian of choice, because we have to make these choices that stop blocking ourselves. And once we finally stop blocking ourselves, then we step into new levels of who we are. And we didn't even know. Like when I left my marriage, I didn't know I was going to start an archetypal consulting business and start appearing on podcasts and actually have my own thing. It's because when you stop blocking yourself, you don't even know what you can become. So unblock, take the steps, make the choices, even small ones at a time, even if it's just going to the gym. Maybe you don't start with getting a divorce. Maybe you start with going to the gym. And then you start to trust yourself. Oh, look, I'm someone that can go to the gym on my own. I'm someone that can go to a restaurant on my own. What else can I do? What's my next thing? What's the next frontier? And you just start to become and inhabit more and more of yourself, who you are meant to be. And I don't think there's any real end to it. We just come up against an even bigger thing and we unblock ourselves from that. And then, oh, look, I'm someone who can do this really other cool thing. What's next on the horizon? What's the next thing I'm capable of?
Yeah, building blocks of confidence. And I love that you said that because I always say to people, when you're taking those things that look like leaps, just take baby steps up to the cliff. Don't just, jump off. But the fun thing that I recognize is when I finally did take those leaps, then I built this next empowerment thing, like you said, the what's next.
Yes.
And then the fear became excitement. And I think that was the turning point of going to the guardian of choice for me was, oh, I do get to decide. When I got out of corporate, which was absolutely soul sucking for 27 years, to start the life coaching business, I didn't think it was ever possible, like you, to have a choice of my schedule and I can go on vacation when I want, and I can have the clients that I want, and I can talk about things that I want. It is so empowering that it then becomes your soul mission and almost, like an addiction that I need to have that excitement. So the fear, if we're brave, can become, it can become something that is no longer fear, but turns into that excitement piece.
Yeah, because you've become big enough. You've become more powerful than the fear. Now it's just excitement because you've already been through so many hurdles. You trust yourself now. That prostitute has become the guardian of faith. You trust yourself now.
Yeah, and it's fun.
Yeah. Now it's what's the next thing instead of, oh no, the next thing. There's a difference.
And I remember as you just said that my mentality was always like this bad thing happened and I'm like, oh man, it comes in threes. I got two more bad things coming. I mean,
Oh, the
I was
victim.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was just doom and gloom, and a lot of that does come from some of your and I'm not blaming, but just the things that we saw around us, heard around us.
Absolutely.
My family of origin was there could be a beautiful blue sky, the sun is shining, but if there's one cloud, like watch out, there's going to be a storm coming. And so I was
Yeah.
really trained to believe even if something good happened, there's got to be something bad, the other shoe's going to drop at any moment, and that's a tough thing to get unprogrammed, right?
It is. And I bet you at times that starts to creep in. And when that does, you just can recognize it so much faster. You can say, oh, look, there I am doing that silly pattern again,
Yeah.
and then you can, instead of it like weighing you down for a day or two, maybe you can just notice it in that moment and say, let's shift that.
Yeah,
Let's
that's when the warrior comes in and says, I will not allow that.
Right. It's just practice. It's practicing noticing when we've gone back into default, which we have to do all the time, and getting better and more skilled at the shift of consciousness.
I love that. So what is the child archetype?
Child archetype is the part of us, I think if you've worked with all the other three, we've kind of already worked through the child to some degree. But the child, first of all, there's different types of child archetypes. So depending on the type of child that you are, they'll show up a little bit differently. But basically, we're thinking about issues of dependence versus independence, and immaturity versus maturity, and belonging versus individuation. And none of those things are bad. It's about finding the balance in the middle. Like, we don't want to be so overly independent that we don't need our community or our families, but we don't want to be so dependent on them either that we can't take steps as individuals into our lives. So it's finding a good balance, or it's the part of us that, I'm really good at saying, I don't know how to do that. So I guess I just won't do it. Like, I don't know how to do social media. I don't know how to do that. And so, but that's my child archetype talking. So either if I want to be the sovereign in my life, which is where the child moves to a sovereign, I either have to learn, I have to like hire someone to teach me, or I have to hire someone to do it for me. Any of those things are fine. But just saying, I don't know how to do this and staying stuck there isn't helpful. And I'm staying stuck in my child, you
Yeah,
know?
it's like we make ourselves small, we put ourselves in a corner, and we sit there until it fixes itself, right?
And then generally it doesn't. And then we're very limited in what we can do.
Yeah,
You
yeah. And then we go back to the victim mentality and why is my business not growing?
Right. But if you're the sovereign, you say, this is a problem that I need to address. I have many options for how I'm going to address it. What am I going to pick?
1,000,000%. And you and I are similar in age. In the fact that when I started this podcast, it took 6 months. It was on my vision board for January, and I was sitting messing around. I'm very artistic, so I love an outlet of creativity, and so I was making mini houses for a while. It's one of my I shift every few weeks into a new hobby. My husband's like, "What are we doing this week?" Um, it's a little bit of my autistic thing, but I was just sitting there, and the reason it stopped me was I was in that child archetype where I was like, technology, I don't know anything about recording, I don't know anything about microphones and editing, and I don't know platforms, what do you, and literally I was just sitting there, and listeners, I think I'm not sure if you guys have heard this story, but I've talked about it, and I heard a voice and it said, go start the podcast. And
Yeah.
I literally looked around like, who is saying this? And I
Interesting.
did. I got up and I went in the office and I was like, okay, we're doing this. And so I came to that sovereign place where just find out, just Google how to do it. Just find a platform, reach out to someone on LinkedIn or take a course. And it's so easy. And I'm a one man band here where I not only learned how to do it, I've learned how to do it myself. And
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
even stress over dogs barking or
Mhm.
anything. I don't even care about editing, to be real, because I love the authenticity and genuineness of just having a conversation like we are.
How does it
So
feel now to have stepped into your sovereignty around this podcast? How does that feel versus when you were kind of messing around doing everything else other than that?
it's incredible. And it's funny that you say that because my daughter and I are going to be doing the 100th episode. In 1 year, I've done 100 episodes, and you will be 101. So
Good job.
how momentous is that you just you do hold yourself back. And I always say, first everything allows resistance, fear, right? That's my acronym, because at first everything is resistance, and then we go to, like you said, when we're going to these guardian and we're going to the light side of these archetypes, then it's face everything and rise. And that hump is so fun when you're on the other side of it, but it's so hard to get there, right?
It is. And that's why when we talk about the saboteur, I like to think about a liberator energy just pushing us a little bit over that edge where the liberator sort of says the gig is up, like the liberator will not take no for an answer. I just wrote about this on my blog. Like the liberator, if you're really working that saboteur and wanting to get out, the liberator is going to make sure that you do the thing.
I love it. I always say, what would my future self thank me for? So if I'm doing the sabotage, which we all do, right? It's uncomfortable.
All of us. Yeah.
Like and I'll say, I'll call I will call the saboteur the excuser.
Yeah.
There's always a reason to not do it. There's a million reasons not to do it, but finding the reason to do it is the only thing that brings the action that we
And what
need.
is your goal? Is your goal to be a podcaster? Then you really don't have a choice. You have to do it. If that's your goal, if your goal is to be someone who like sleeps till 10 o'clock every morning, which is fine. I'm not dissing anyone who wants to sleep because they might have different goals. But if your goal is to do this thing, then not doing the thing is not getting you there. So
I
yeah.
love that. I love that. Let's talk about so the I love that we have those archetypes. And then isn't there another side to it where you have like artists, creatives, that what is that? Can you explain that to us?
Hundreds of archetypes out there. And Carolyn Mace has kind of, and I'm sure other people have too, divided them into different families. And I don't have the families like, off the top of my head, but they're like the creative types and the divine types and the royal types and helpers and visionaries. There's a number of families of them. And so we each can claim authentically our own 12 different archetypes. Now we each have the 4 that we've already mentioned, and then there's 8 others. Now the good news is that we can call on the energy of any archetype at any time. We're not cut off from any archetype, but generally there's 12 that have been prominent in our lives since our incarnation, since we came here. And so our job, if you want to get deeper into this work, is to kind of look through, study lists of archetypes, which if anyone wanted to come work with me, I could give them a list of archetypes. It would just be a start. There are hundreds of archetypes. And when you resonate with an archetype, like if you're an artist and you start reading about the artist archetype and it has this resonance that blows you away, then that's one of your 12, so there's, so everybody has 12, 4 are the same, and 8 are different for everybody. Does that help answer your question?
Oh, it totally does. Yeah, yeah. There's 12 types, and of course we're complicated. We're humans. I mean,
Yeah.
we're never going to be one of anything. And I love that.
Right.
So I just out of my own curiosity, and I hope listeners, I'm asking the questions you want to know. Do we tend to surround ourselves with similar archetypes, or do we attract different archetypes? What have you seen in your work of how do we interact with others relationship wise, not even romantically, but family, friends, with different archetypes or similar
I think
archetypes?
that's a good question. I think it can be very individual. It also depends how stuck in shadows we are, because then codependent patterns can appear. If I'm someone with the coward archetype, do I want to hang out with a bully my whole life? That's just one example. Probably there are personality preferences, but that's just a personality thing. That doesn't have to be an archetype thing. I guess I don't know exactly how to answer that. If you're an artist and a creative and a visionary, you might find it a little harder to hang out with someone who's very concrete, like with an engineer archetype, but that doesn't even have to be true necessarily. We can
It's
all,
not, because I'm married to an
yeah,
engineer and I'm
exactly.
extremely artistic and
Yeah.
free-spirited Gemini here. But I love that. And I think you would agree with me. Another way of saying that, your vibe attracts your tribe. And I think at whatever level of healing and understanding of ourselves we've reached, however closer to the light of our archetype we are, I'm law of attraction. I think we do attract people at the same level as we are vibrationally, energetically. So
Yeah.
I
We can also, if someone comes in with a much different level of vibration, we have the courage and power to say, I'm just not open for that.
yeah, I always say we're either teaching or learning. And so we have an opportunity to teach someone to do better if they're open to that, or we're learning to recognize that thing that they're doing that may still be in us that we want to do better, right?
Sure. Good.
Um, so I love it. And I love that you're a yoga teacher. And I think you would be if I could turn my computer around, you'd be extremely proud of me. So my birthday was in May and I got this lovely, let's see if I can show you this lovely trapeze.
Ah,
And I love it. And I love yoga teachers. For me, having quite a bit of arthritis, this has been life changing for stretching. And I can't do all the moves in yoga because of some of my joint and arthritis issues. But tell us how yoga can change someone's life, because I know that has changed my life.
well, that's a big question. So yoga changed my life. I'm not actually teaching yoga anymore. I did for a number of years, just with kids and work. That's the one thing I don't do, but I still have my own practice and I still am tuned into what other yoga teachers are doing and try to immerse myself as much as I can online in those communities. But they say, and which I firmly believe, that a lot of our emotions and trauma and stress and past stuff gets trapped into our bodies. And as we work to loosen those things up, now I'm talking about hatha yoga, which is most common here in our country, the movements, the physical movements, which is not all of yoga. But as we start to stretch ourselves more, find more space in our bodies, though, just through doing all the stretching, some of these old emotions can release through that. And then we can have an emotional release. Sometimes it comes in terms of a physical release that doesn't always feel so good in the moment. But as we work through this stuff, we become more solid. We become more in the light side of anything.
Yeah, clearing it out, clearing it out. That's a
Yeah.
physical way of clearing it out, as meditation is the spiritual and mental way of clearing that out. And also it's similar to when you have a massage,
A
you know,
movement center. Yeah.
yeah, when your nose runs and they say we're getting those toxins out of your muscles. So
Also a coherence between body, mind, and spirit. It's like we become a little bit more coherent with all of ourselves. And then that in turn can provide us with more information, just more knowing, just more groundedness, more ability to access what's really going on for us through our bodies, I think is an important piece of that as well.
yeah, definitely getting to know self better. And listeners, don't be afraid to do that work. It's hard. It's hard. Sometimes we have to face things that don't feel good, but feeling it is the key to letting it go. Like we don't, it's like, what's that saying? You can't fix what you don't know. And so
So
getting to know,
often there's discomfort as we're moving to the next level.
yeah, yeah. And that involves journaling and all those kind of things that bring so much more awareness of who we are. And then also this willingness, because I think in the end, we're here to do better. We're here to learn something, to experience this lifetime for a reason. We're not just going to go through the motions and waste an entire lifetime of not doing anything and staying stagnant, because you deserve more than that. You came into
And all
this
of
life.
that said, I'm a big proponent of yoga. I strongly and highly recommend people start engaging in a yoga practice if they haven't already. So
I want to know the certified shake your soul dance teacher. I want to know, because it just the title alone makes me just want to get up and move. So tell us about that.
well, a teacher named Daniel Levin created that system. And when I was at Kripalu, I went through his training, which is amazing. It was the Shake Your Soul dance teacher part, but it was also kind of teaching people to do therapy, somatic based therapy. So it was a whole program that he ran, which I'm very grateful to have gone through. And the Shake Your Soul part is a very accessible form of dance that any person who owns a body can engage in this type of dance. And he uses really world music with this wonderful, wonderful different types of music from all over the world. And you learn different ways of being in your body. And that was incredible. It was an incredible journey to be on. And I was so lucky that when I was at Kripalu, I was able to share that with groups of people at a time.
Oh,
Uh,
it sounds fun. It sounds freeing.
Fun, free. You get to know yourself so much better. You get to inhabit different parts of yourselves, kind of like the way archetypes do too. So if we're going to do a movement that's flowing, what does it feel like to flow? Or what does it feel like to be more, rigid in your movement? And you just experiment with all of it. And then you have access to different parts of yourself, or different parts of yourself that you like to bring in. Just like if you'd like to bring in a warrior energy using archetypes, well, maybe you can embody that. And you can do that through dance, through music, just standing in your bedroom. We can embody these different energies that we just want to try on. And if they resonate with us, if they fit with us, we practice them more, we can become that.
Yes, yes. One of the things that I always suggest when people are going through stress or indecision or just, feeling down, is to do the opposite of what you feel. And I have actually, as a life coach, said, oh, you're depressed, you want to stay in bed, get up and dance, and doing the opposite physically sometimes of what your mental state is can help you to kind of flow out of that or move out of that. And how can dance, here's my idea: children, animals, and dance and music are all four things that I think you cannot stay in a bad mood. You cannot stay in the dark, miserable, unhappy when you are doing something with those four things. What do you think?
I think that's a great philosophy.
That's why my brand is everything of surrounding the dogs, of course, because yeah, they just if we could live more like them and live unconditionally and just remove all of that resistance and overthinking, my goodness, that's what dogs are. They're completely unfiltered, loving creatures, and all animals, in my opinion, not just dogs, but I'm particularly attached to the puppies. So I am so grateful that you came on today. You were such a wealth of information and spirituality. And really, I hope listeners, you got as much as I did, where you never have to stay in one place. You're about movement and flow and fluidity and energy. And it's okay to recognize where you are as long as you move to the place where you're most light. And that is what Carolyn gave us today. And she's going to tell us all of her information and where to find her and how you can connect with her to work with her. So tell us everything we need to know of how to find you, Carolyn.
So my website is yourradiantlife.net, and my email address is carolyn@yourradiantlife.net. And my Facebook page is Your Radiant Life with Carolyn Wallace. And I wanted to let people know that I am now offering even just single sessions. If someone feels stuck in one area of their life, whatever they choose, we can spend one session and work through one or two of the survivor archetypes, really get clear about who's showing up, whether it's the child, whether it's the victim, and we'll make a plan for what do we want to see happening, what do we want to move toward. We'll create an intention, we'll create a ritual around it that they can do for the next few weeks, and I wanted to let people know that that's available to them.
I love that. See, there's no commitment, but I'm certain after one session, guys, there's no way you're going to want to not have more sessions because
Either way, yes.
tell
Yeah.
us what was your blog site again? So I have yourradiant.net is your website, and then
yourradiantlife.net.
Your Radiant Life.
.net. And my blog is right on there.
Oh, good. Yourradiantlife.net. Okay, perfect. I tried to write as fast as we spoke, but I didn't make it. So
sign up for my email list there, or you can just go to the Your Radiant Life with Carolyn Wallace, and then I post everything that I post on my website. I post on the Facebook page too. So
I love it. So I'm starting a new session, a new segment. I've done different segments in the past, and with you today, I think it's so appropriate. I'm starting a new segment called Please Do. And this is, I want to know the best saying or advice someone had given you. And I'm going to start with an example because I hate throwing people, coming up with things off the bat. So I'll give you a moment to think. I went to a bed and breakfast in Jerome, Arizona, which is a very lovely spiritual place if you guys haven't been there. And we went to a bed and breakfast. And the hostess there, her name is Andrea. She's absolutely amazing. She had another customer coming that was very unpleasant, very demanding. She asked if we could switch rooms. This person was very aggressive. And I said, sure, absolutely, not a problem. And I remember before we left, she had left me a note, saying, thank you for your stay. And what she said on it was, aren't you glad you're you? And I loved that so much because I thought she wasn't being mean. She wasn't calling this person out. She wasn't like, oh, she's terrible. She just went with the light and said, I see the light in you. And aren't you glad you're you? So what do you have for me that is like something profound that you'll never forget?
One thing that stands out for me, just as you were talking, I haven't mentioned this before, but one day I was on a walk with a friend, and this was years and years ago. And I was kind of, a lot more stuck in victim mode than I am now, and just bemoaning the fact that dating wasn't working out, and I couldn't really find anybody to date. And, this is how it always is. And it harkened back to my childhood. I remember she was a good, dear, loving friend. And she said, stop it. Stop it. This is a new day. This is a new year, a new day. What do you want to create? And I was like, oh, and it really made such an impact on me. And I just thank her to this day for that. Because why was I staying stuck in an old story that wasn't even true anymore?
Yeah. And
I wasn't conscious of it.
yeah.
So when you catch yourself, when I catch myself in victim mode, you stop it. Create a different thought. Dance, pet your dog, whatever it is.
Your friend literally put up a stop sign in front of you.
Did I read it? Yep.
There is a skit on Saturday Night Live from years ago with Bob Newhart. And I don't know if you remember this. And the girl goes into Bob Newhart. He's a therapist. And she says, you know, oh, do I pay you? And he goes, well, this isn't going to take very long. And she says, oh, okay. And he said, well, you know, he does this whole spiel of getting ready for what her problem is. And then she says, I'm scared of, I can't remember what she's scared of, dying being put in a box and suffocating to death. And he goes, okay, are you ready? We're going to start your session. And, you know, here's what she goes, I don't know what to do. And he looks at her and he goes, stop it. And that the entire skit is her saying, well, I know, but this and this and this. And he just goes, stop it. And she goes, do I need to write it down? He goes, I don't think you're going to need to write it down. He goes, it's pretty simple. And so you saying that just completely brought, you have to look it up on YouTube. It's out there. Bob Newhart, SNL.
All right.
Just stop it. So
yes.
That was a perfect ending. I'm so grateful for you. As I always say, thank you for the hour of your life you just gifted to myself and the listeners. That is priceless to me. So you are amazing.
Great. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. All right, listeners, that's going to wrap us up for this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed Carolyn. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you recognize maybe some of your own archetypes, and you know, you can work with Carolyn and you can work on just figuring out how to do better to be more light in your life and to create the life that you want, you desire, you deserve, and you have choices. So as Carolyn does as well, I offer sessions in life coaching and dating coaching and relationship coaching, confidence coaching, self-esteem, all that fun stuff. Let's get you there. I've been there. And as I said, the empowerment part of getting over the hump, once you're on the other side, it feels so great. And you really want to just work to get there. So I'm at lifecoachmaureen.com. Don't forget my books. And I have a huge announcement coming up about another book I have. And so my dog is more enlightened than I am. And my dog is my relationship coach, available Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Outskirts Press, on my website. And most of all, our boutique for doggies, healthy treats, healthy paw balms, shampoos, mydogiseverything.net. And I want to announce we are now offering kitty products. Yes, I did that. I went there. The people have spoken, our customers have spoken, and felt I was discriminating against our feline friends. And so I would never want to do that. So now I'm including some really fun stuff for our baby kitties. So mydogiseverything.net now includes stuff for your kitty. So thank you all for being here today. Leave your comments. Don't forget those reviews. I appreciate that so much. We're at 5 stars on Apple and Spotify, and love you all for that. If you want to connect with Carolyn and you somehow miss her website that I'm going to have posted, feel free to reach out to me as well. And anything you need, any comments, anything you want to be a guest, please reach out. So lifecoachmaureen.com. Thank you all. Until next week, have a fantastic week. I love you, love you, love you all. Take care of you. Take care of each other. Most of all, take care of those furry babies. Please, please adopt and don't shop. Until next week. Thank you.